Today, we're going to talk about the four forces of flight. And I want to use some drawings to explain this to you because it's important to understand what is happening to a plane when it's flying in equilibrium. In other words, it's basically steady flight. It's not going up, it's not going down, it's not turning. So we have four forces that are always acting upon it. So here's my airplane. Okay? So one force that is acting upon it is the same force that you guys are feeling right now. Why are we not floating in the air? That's right, because of gravity. Gravity basically has us pinned to the ground. Well, the same thing is true of the plane. So we're going to draw an arrow that's going to show us here with gravity, okay? So let's say this plane weighs 2,000 pounds. So we have 2,000 pounds of weight from gravity, okay? But we just talked about equilibrium and flying. Well, how does equilibrium happen? It happens because we have to be producing lift. So our wing that we have on our airplane has to be producing lift, and that lift has to equal, if we're staying basically flying straight and level here, we have to be producing 2,000 pounds of lift. Now, gravity is pulling us down, but our lift is keeping us airborne, okay? And we're maintaining level flight. So as we look at our plane here, we basically have now thrust, okay? So in other words, we have through the propeller that's turning here and the motor, we're producing thrust. The thrust is moving us forward, okay? Which is awesome. But guess what? There's no free lunch in flying. So what ends up happening is we have also drag that's produced. And the drag is pulling us backwards. And by the way, when we look at drag, there's two types that we want to understand. The first one is parasitic drag. And the second one is induced drag. Okay, let me explain what each one is. So imagine that you are in your car. Okay, it's a nice day, you roll down the window and you stick your arm out the window and you're doing about 40 miles an hour. What's going to happen when I put my arm out the window? It's going to get pushed back by the air, okay? So that is the example of parasitic drag. Friction with the air is causing my arm to move. That is one type of friction that we have through the skin, the wings, bolts that are not aerodynamic, etc. So all sorts of friction that we have with the plane. But we have one other type of drag that we want to understand, and that is induced drag. And induced drag happens anytime that I'm producing lift, I'm also producing induced drag. And the reason that happens is because when we are producing lift, this shape of this wing is basically, it causes us to have lower pressure on top, higher pressure on the bottom. Those pressures want to mix together, but they can't until they get to the wingtip. So at that point, I get a vortice. I get basically a churning that's taking place at either end of the wing. And that basically is what's producing my induced drag. So those elements, understanding the four forces and the types of drag, help you to understand what's happening in that aircraft when you're flying in it.